Here are 20 of the scariest Halloween stories. Let's begin. 1. Someone is under the bed. I began tucking him into bed and he tells me, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." I look underneath for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's somebody on my bed." 2. Halloween night in the cemetery. One legend tells that anyone who goes to a cemetery at midnight on Halloween can see ghosts, but they will have to pay with their own soul. On one such night, a group of friends decided to test the legend's validity. They went to the cemetery, but one of them didn't dare to walk among the graves and chose to stay at the entrance. The other boys began running through the cemetery, making fun of the fact that nothing was happening. And for a while, it all seemed like a joke. At some point, the boy who stayed outside the cemetery saw the others coming towards him with large, wide, and bulging eyes. He started screaming, and the people living near the cemetery heard him and came to his aid. When they arrived, the boys were dead, and the one who remained outside the cemetery was speechless. To this day, no one knows what actually happens in the cemetery on Halloween night. 3. The legend of Chucky, the cursed doll. Chucky, the cursed and terrifying doll that appears in numerous horror and Halloween movies, originates from an American urban legend based on supposedly true events. It is believed to have belonged to Eugene Robert Otto and was given to him by the maid in his parents' house when he was 6. The maid was rumored to practice black magic and voodoo. Although it appeared to be an ordinary rag doll, it led to strange and terrifying events. It would appear at the foot of the boy's bed when he slept and would ransack his entire room, frightening him. Eugene's parents often overheard their son talking to the doll, receiving answers in a completely different voice. The doll is said to have terrorized multiple children and was eventually removed from the house. Today, it is housed at the East Martello Fort Museum, where curious visitors from around the world come to see it. 4. Kuchisake Onna. This is the name of an urban legend from Japan that means the slit-mouthed woman. The story began circulating around 1970 when a ghostly woman with a mouth slit from ear to ear, covered with a medical mask, haunted the streets. According to the legend, she would wait until a child walked alone on the street, then remove her mask and ask if she was beautiful. If the child said no, they were killed on the spot. If they said yes, the ghost would make them look like her. 5. The dog in the basement. My mother told me never to go into the basement, but I wanted to see what was making that noise. It sounded like a dog, and I wanted to see the dog, so I opened the basement door and tiptoed down a bit. I didn't see a dog, and then Mom yanked me out of the basement and yelled at me. Mom had never yelled at me before, and it made me sad, and I cried. Then Mom told me I was not allowed to go into the basement ever again, and she gave me a cookie. That made me feel better, so I didn't ask her why the boy in the basement was making dog sounds or why he had no hands or feet. 6. The home ghost. Last night, a friend quickly pulled me out of the house not to miss the official opening of a live music nightclub. After a few drinks, I realized I didn't have my phone in my pocket. I checked the table where I sat at the bar, the bathroom, with no result, so I used my friend's phone to call myself. After 2 calls, someone answered with a soft, hoarse chuckle and then hung up. They didn't answer again. Eventually, I gave up calling and headed home. I found my phone on my nightstand, right where I left it. 8. The jacket. One night, an attractive young man approached a girl having a drink at a bar. They talked for a long time, and she bid him farewell. Stepping outside, it was raining, so he went out with her and lent her his jacket. He accompanied her part of the way to her house and found the perfect excuse to see her again. The girl promised to return his jacket the next day and gave him her home address. The next morning, when he showed up at the given address, an older woman claimed not to know anyone named Laura, but suddenly, the young man saw a picture of her on the hall table. The woman led him to the cemetery and told him that this young lady was her daughter, who had died of an asthma attack on a rainy night after going out with her friends. 8. The chair. When my sister and I were kids, our family lived in an old and charming country house. Our favorite attraction was a ghost. We called her Mama because she seemed so kind and caring. Some mornings, my sister and I would wake up, and there would be a cup on each of our nightstands that hadn't been there the night before. Mama left them there so we wouldn't get thirsty during the night. All she wanted was to take care of us. Among the furniture in the house was a chair that we kept next to one of the living room walls. Whenever we watched TV or played games, Mama silently moved that chair across the room toward us. Sometimes she even managed to place it in the middle of the living room. We always felt a little sad when we put it back by the wall. Mama just wanted to be closer to us. Years later, long after we moved, I found an old newspaper article about the previous occupant of the country house, a widow. She had killed both her children by giving them poisoned milk before bed. Then she hanged herself. The article included a picture of the living room with a woman hanging from a beam. Beneath her was the overturned chair, placed right in the center of the room. 9. Sleep paralysis. When I was young, I used to experience sleep paralysis almost every night. I would usually see my mother hanging in the corner of my room. A week ago, my mother was found hanged in the corner of my room. 10. The cemetery girl's story. It was midnight and a young man named Alex was returning home from a party. At 20 years old, he was living life to the fullest. He arrived at a park near his house. The park was eerily quiet, deserted, and the sounds of crickets filled the air, making him look left and right every second. As he cautiously walked, he noticed a girl with a slightly pale face, long blonde hair down to her knees. "Hey, what are you doing here at this hour?" The girl didn't respond and continued staring at a bird in a nearby tree. "Why aren't you talking?" The girl remained silent. "What's your name?" "My name is Rochelle." The next day, the boy spent time with the girl. They talked, and he pricked his finger to give her blood, which she accepted with a napkin. The following day, he didn't visit her in the park as he went to a party with his friends and, of course, boasted about his new girlfriend. "It's impossible," his friend said. "In our neighborhood, there was only one Rochelle who died many years ago in that park." The boy didn't believe it, so he asked for Rochelle to be exhumed. When they opened the coffin, the girl was dead with a napkin over her face. 11. The grave robber. Following a suspicious investigation, the police in Nizhny Novgorod discovered dolls made from parts of mummified corpses in the home of a resident named Anatoly Moskvin, aged 45. The horrifying dolls were carefully dressed, with their hands and faces covered with cloth. Moskvin would arrange the dolls on his bed or in cupboards, intending to create a collection of them until his parents paid him a surprise visit in 2011 and alerted the police. The police report revealed that Anatoly Moskvin, with high intellectual capacity, had desecrated the graves of girls aged 3 to 12 years and constructed those dolls he named and celebrated their birthdays with. 12. Mother and child. After a hard day at the office, I returned home and found my girlfriend with a child in her arms. I don't know what was scarier, seeing my girlfriend dead with the child she never got to give birth to, or the fact that someone had entered my apartment to place them there. 13. The closet. The last thing I saw was the clock showing 0:07 as her claws dug into my chest, her nails filled with dirt and her other hand muffling my scream. I leaped out of bed, relieved it was just a nightmare, but the clock showed 0:06, and the closet started creaking strangely. 14. Phantom animals. I grew up in an animal-loving family with many cats and a few dogs, so I'm used to the scratching on the floor and the sounds by the doors. Now it's a little harder to bear these sounds because I live alone, and I have no pets. 15. The crying girl. My daughter won't stop crying and screaming in the middle of the night. I went to her grave and begged her to stop, but she won't listen to me, not at all. 16. The grave. I can't move, I can't breathe, I can't hear anything, and it's dark all the time. If I had known I would feel this bad here, I would have asked to be cremated. 17. Grandmother. My daughter keeps crying at night. I went and my husband went, but she won't be quiet. She's crying for her grandmother who left 2 days ago. One night my husband said, "What if we leave her with her grandmother and go on a vacation? Maybe she'll calm down." I thought about it for a moment, and it was a pretty good idea. "You're right, and we'll bury her tomorrow. We have plenty of time to make our plans." 18. The bad man. When I was little, my sister used to tell me that a bad man was watching us from the window. I didn't believe her until I found a picture in our mailbox with both of us asleep. But the picture wasn't taken from the window. It was taken from our room. 19. Fear of water. A few months ago, I stayed overnight at a friend's place. The next morning, I asked her why her hair and clothes were wet. She replied, He does it every night because he knows I'm afraid of water. 20. The Ouija board. A few years ago, I received a Ouija board on my birthday. There's nothing scary about it except that every night at 12:08, I find it on the floor under my desk, with the plastic planchette moving frantically, pointing to letters and numbers without any particular meaning. Be careful when you press the subscribe button. Someone is watching you too.